Thank you, Susan. Hi, everybody. Good morning. What fun to be here in New Orleans with you. What fun to see you here today. And what a great topic, right, of how to engage your board. You know, I've been in this fundraising business now about 30 years, maybe, something like that anyway, and maybe more than that. And periodically through that time, I have wrestled with the idea that the nonprofit model is broken with the mission board and executive director. Sometimes it is so challenging to make that work and to make it work well and right. And I've sort of gone in up and down waves in my beliefs about that. But for the last couple of years, I've really come out the other side, and I think it really is and can be a fantastic model as long as you are committed to turning your board into a powerful fundraising machine. And that's really what this session is about today. My plan is, we have an hour and a quarter. My plan is to work with you for about an hour and then take questions for the last 15 minutes or so. I will wander around as I go. I'm not much good at standing very still. And if you have questions through it, feel free to raise your hand. I'll either take them then or defer them to the end. All right, what else? Anything else you need to know about me? I don't think so. I do live in the South Bronx, which is the Bronx is burning part of New York, for those of you who are curious about that. I somehow always find myself living in poor neighborhoods. And as a result, I build some fascinating relationships with people who help me understand the world in a different way. So I am a great believer in the work that you do with the boys and the girls of the world. I think it's so important. So thank you for doing all that you do. Let us get rolling here. I'd like to start with a thought question. I'd like you to think about this. Imagine, and I'm really serious about, I want you to think seriously about this. Imagine what it would be like if every one of your board members was tremendously excited about raising money. And just think about that for a minute. I know some of you are laughing, but I really do want you to think about that. What would that mean? Let's start this way. What would it look like first? What would be the symptoms? How would you know that was the case? Would, for example, you get a call on Monday morning from one of your board members who said, hey, I ran into someone over the weekend and they are perfect for us to ask for a gift. I made an appointment and will you come with me? Holy moly, right? That would be something, right? If a board member called you up and said, you know, I finished my 5 calls, 3 of them were successful, right? 2 of them we have to go back to later, but I'm ready for more. Can you imagine? Right? What if you had board members who took you out to lunch and said, you know, what you do for us is so important, and I know how hard it is, and I just want to tell you that I and every one of your board members are really behind you, right? You tell us what to do, we're going to be there, and we're going to do it. What if you had a board member who said, you know, I'm still a little uncomfortable asking for gifts, and I think we should put up some money to bring someone in to train us? Right? I mean, would that be something to have a board that regularly functioned with you as a partner in fundraising? That would be something worth striving for. No? What would the consequences of it be?
Less stress.
Less stress. More money.
Services for children.
Services for children, thank you, right? I mean, imagine that. Imagine if everybody really got excited. If when they came together at a board meeting, they actually had and celebrated the development committee report. What if somebody on the board started a competition saying, between now and our next board meeting, I'm going to raise more money than anyone else on this board? Yeah, right? Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be something? I don't think that's me. I hope that's not me. Oh, good, okay. My worry is that that's me, right? I must confess it has happened once. So I think that's worth thinking about. In fact, I think it's worth thinking about asking that question and building that image with your board. And the question for our session today is, what would that take? Because if you could go home and transform your board into a fundraising machine where everyone was excited and had fun at this and understood its power, you could transform your organization. Now, I've spent a lot of time thinking about what it would take. And I imagine that many of you think what it would take is having all rich people on your board who are comfortable with fundraising, right? But I'll put it to you a different way. Here's what I think it would take. And we're going to go through each of these in this session today. This is really the outline of what we're going to talk about. We will start by talking about enlisting the right people, but not quite in the way you might imagine it. Then we're going to talk about how to inspire people, because fundraising does take courage and you have to be inspired to do it well. That's really true. We're going to talk about training them, and I do believe in training. I really do believe in training. We're going to talk about holding people accountable, and we're going to talk about rewarding them for their success. Now, as I was this morning, I got up at 5 and I was kind of looking at my slides to make sure that I had them right, and two things struck me. First of all, that there's something missing here, and maybe by the end we'll figure out what it is. There is a piece missing. But more importantly, it struck me that that's what happens with my grandson's basketball team, right? Or any of the teams that you work with in your Boys and Girls Clubs, right? I'm sure there are people in your clubs who work on building teams, right? And they bring the right people, they bring the right kids into the basketball court, and they inspire them to win or to be able to shoot the best baskets, and they train them, right? They work with them on their dribbling skills, and they hold them accountable if they don't show up for practice. There are consequences for that, right? And they reward them when they win games. This set of things that we need to do to build a powerful fundraising board is not a set of things that we are unfamiliar with, or that you in the Boys and Girls Club movement are unfamiliar with. I imagine that you have people who build teams of kids all the time. Why is it so hard to think about doing that with your board? Well, somehow we're not sure who's the boss, right? We're not sure if the board is the boss or if you are the boss. And we're not sure who should be the coach, and if we overstep our bounds, if we think about them as a basketball team, right? Right? That feels a little awkward. But I want to put it to you that you are the boss of your board when it comes to fundraising. It's your job to help build a team and help shape them into a team, because by themselves, it's very difficult. How many of you have served on boards? A lot of you. How many of you feel a little awkward serving on boards? Is it an awkward place for any of you? No? I take to say I have served on several boards, and I find it an awkward place, an awkward role. Why? Because I never know how loud my voice should be or how quiet my voice should be. I never know when I should step forward and play a leadership role or step back. I never know who's the boss, the executive director or the board, or whether I as an individual board member am the boss. Or I don't think people talk about that much, but I think it's complicated, and more complicated than we let on. And I think part of that is what holds us back as boards and as direct development directors. Let's dive. Well, first of all, let me tell you, how many, if you think about whether you have an inspired fundraising machine for a board, how many of you, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is, no, my board is definitely not an inspired fundraising team, and 10, my board is an inspired fundraising team, how many of you are between 1 and 5? And how many of you are 6 and 7? Anyone 8, 9, 10? Yes. Did I catch one over? Yes. Over here, yes, we have a couple in the room. So notice who those people are and go talk to them. You want to stand up? You guys stand up, stand up. Who are you? You should be talking to them. They've done it. They know how to do it. It is something valuable if you can find it in the field. You should be modeling yourself on what it is they do. Do you know who those people are who raised their hands? Yes? Yes. Are you willing to be outed? I outed you. So, all right.
Andrea, may I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
You're talking about boards, but what about people on boards? You may
People on boards,
have
yes.
2 or 3 people who are very good at it,
Yes.
not the entire inspired board.
Yes, well, I'm going to get into this more, but I want you to inspire all of the people on your board to work on the fundraising field. I do think that every board should be a fundraising board. And I think every board member should be a part of the fundraising team. I think that it's not something for 2 or 3 people on a board to be part of. Everyone needs to be part of it, right? Fundraising is what we do. We'll get into that. All right, let's get the right people on your bus. Let's get the right people on your team. If you've read the Jim Collins book, Good to Great, he has a whole chapter on getting the right people on the bus. It's a worthy book to read. Good to Great is what it's called. He's written a little piece on the social sector. Read the big one. The little social sector one's not so interesting, but the big one is definitely interesting. So what do I mean when I talk about getting the right people on the bus? And this may surprise you. So I think there are 2 things that every board member must have. The first is that they have to be committed to your mission and vision. If they're not, they shouldn't be on your board, period. I mean, that's simple. That's right. And somebody should ask them to step down. If they undermine your mission or vision, they shouldn't be there. The second, which I just believe is so important, and I don't think we pay enough attention to, and I don't think we say it often enough, is that every board member should be a person who does what he or she says he or she is going to do. Now that sounds simple, but the reality is that it's not. And if I had every minute back from all the people I have worked with who have had to bird dog board members to get them to do what they say they're going to do, right? I get knowing nods, right? I could change the world with that time. So to my mind, you can't afford to have people on your board who talk big and do nothing. It undermines everything. It's like having someone on my grandson's basketball team who doesn't show up to practice. And when he shows up, he can make a great basket, but he doesn't show up. It's not worth having him on my team, right? It's true of board members too. And if I were in your shoes, when I brought a board member on, when I started asking them if they would be willing to get on, I would bring that right out there. In fact, I believe in having people jump through a couple of hoops. You can tell what people's patterns are. You can tell if they do what they say they're going to do. Just ask them to do something and see if they're going to do it. That's not so difficult. Right? Ask them if they're willing to write up something for you. Ask them if they're willing to make a call on your behalf before you ask them to serve on the board. And look and see, do they actually do it? If they don't do it, that behavior is going to continue. Right? So ask them to jump them through a hoop or 2 before they serve on your board. Watch how they do things. How they do things beforehand is not going to change after they get on your board. So pay close attention. Then I have 5 characteristics here, and I think every board member should have at least 3 out of every 5. Money is helpful, though I certainly don't think everyone has to have a lot of money on your board. Stature is helpful. What do I mean by stature? Well, that's that they need to have enough stature in a particular community that is useful to your organization, so that when people see their names, people have a sense that yours is a powerful and a good organization. Right? Stature matters. Time. They need to have enough time to show up for board meetings, at least a chunk of board meetings. And they need to have enough time so that they actually are going to be helpful. Right? Fine to have people with a lot of wealth. If they have houses in 4 places, they're never in town, and they tell you they can't come to board meetings, I'd be hesitant before I put them on my board. You can use them in other ways, but not on your board. right? And it's amazing to me how many people get people on the board just because they're names. It's like you undermine your organization by doing that. Don't do it. Connections. Yeah, connections matter, right? And courage. I put that last because it's in some ways the most important, and things that are last are often important. So if you put courage with any of the two of these other things, you're going to have a good board member as long as they have the first two. They do what they say they're going to do, and they're powerfully engaged in your mission. Now think for a minute about your board. How many of the people on your board would fit in this description of a good board member? I mean, really think about a couple of specific people here. Who fits? You have 2 people on your board who do not fit that? Anybody have at least 2 people who do not fit that? Yes, you have about 12 people who don't fit that? Right? About half your board doesn't fit that. Well, and you've had the courage to say that. I'll bet you're not alone in this room, right? I bet you're not alone in this room. So if you're going to build a power fundraising machine, you can't let that stand. And before this is over, we'll address the question of how do you deal with it? We've got all this dead weight that we've just let sit there. How do we deal with it? It's a big and important question. But for the moment, the question is just, okay, who do you want to get on your board, right? What are the characteristics? And if you can imagine that everyone on your board fit these characteristics, imagine that everyone fit these characteristics, you could start to get a sense of the energy and the bubble, right, that's gonna come up. I would much rather you told me you had 8 board members, all of whom were like this, than that you had 20 board members, 8 of whom were like this. Because when you have 20 board members and 8 are like this, the 8 people come to the meeting and they get angry. Why should we be lifting all the weight when these other people with money, these other names, our community names, aren't lifting weight? So it undermines the energy, it undermines the psychological energy of your group if you bring people on and let them stay on, even though they're not functioning well. Questions? Does it make sense to you? Yes, Mother Kihlstedt, yes. Yes?
When you say money, what kind of scale are you looking at? Because we're from a smaller community and we have principals and police officers on our board.
Yes.
So, I mean, they're not ones who have a ton of money, but they have time and connection.
What do I mean by money? How much money is money, right? That's she says we're from a community where we have police officers on our board and other people who don't have wealth, right? Maybe that's the distinction, money and wealth, right? Somebody can give you $50 or somebody can give you from wealth. So, of course, wealth is wonderful. But I find that in many organizations, particularly many smaller organizations, people of wealth aren't particularly interested in serving on your board. That doesn't mean that they might not contribute at a big level, but they don't particularly want to come to board meetings, don't want that burden. What do I mean by money? For some organizations, someone who can give $500 is a money board member. For some organizations, somebody who can give $1 million is a money board member. So it all depends on your organization. Depends on who you are, where you are, what your resources are. These days, in most organizations, and particularly organizations like Boys and Girls Clubs, we need to have mixed boards. We need to have people who have wealth, perhaps. We need to have people who represent our community, who represent the communities we serve, right? All of that matters. And of course, if you're looking at this description of a good board member, they all fit, right? Or they might all fit. Again, when you wonder about it, think about my grandson's basketball team or your son's basketball team. That's what we're trying to build, right? That excitement, that energy, that enthusiasm. All right. If the right people aren't on your bus, right? And some of the right people aren't on your bus, it's probably a good idea to start actually talking about it, right? This is often the elephant in the room. How many of you have term limits on your board, for your boards? People have to step down after 3-year terms, is that the standard?
Don't have to step down, but their terms come up.
Their terms come up, and how many of you people have to step down after a couple of terms? Not many of you. When they have to step down, of course, you have a natural break. That's easy. When they don't have to step down, but the terms come up, if you can get your board governance committee to start talking about what it is you're really looking for and have those conversations as terms come up, you can change the culture. And you should be changing the culture. Somebody's got to hold on to that tight because it's going to make a difference. Right? Now, given that many of you have boards that are not fundraising machines, I'm curious about what you tell them before they come on board. What do you tell them they have to do when it comes to fundraising before you bring them on board? Let's hear some popcorn here. What do you tell your board members they have to do about fundraising when you're recruiting them? Give or get. Over here?
We turned the corner when we finally had people join a committee for a year and really get to know the lingo and the people involved. But we give them a one-page list that talks about picking 5 out of 10 things.
Do you give them a one-page list? You actually write it out, what it is they need to do? So we have give or get over here. Somebody else? Yes?
We do an individual development plan for each board member.
Ah.
So as part of the orientation, we sat down and we just lay out a plan of action so that determine what each board member can give based on each of them.
Yes, I like it. An individual plan, an individual funding and fundraising plan for each board member.
Only the board chair and myself, CEO.
Yes, I love that. So he's suggesting that they actually have an individual fundraising plan that the board chair and the CEO, they're the only people to see. They sit down with a prospective board member, they go over it beforehand, it's written out, and the people under the prospective board member understands what's going to be expected of them.
Right.
I like that a lot.
Who sees that?
I'm sorry?
Who sees that plan?
The board chair and the CEO see that.
Not the RD.
Not the resource development person?
I don't have a person in that position yet.
Not yet.
But if you did, you would involve the RD.
I would involve that, yes, I would certainly encourage that. I love that because it sets up something I'm going to talk about later when we come to accountability, right? If you're going to hold people accountable, you need to set them up for here's what we want you to do and have you done it, right? So what he's suggested essentially, which is creating a written job description that they agree to and sign off on, sets them up for being held accountable later. Somebody else, what do you ask your board members to do when it comes to fundraising before you bring them on the board? Anybody else? Yes?
We have a whole rookie, it's called the rookie checklist, and it goes over your fundraising commitment, but also attend one major function at the kids, like your youth of the year. It goes through all of their first year commitments, and part of it is orientation into club functions. And it's kind of fun, so we call it the rookie checklist, and they actually have a checklist.
Yeah, a rookie checklist. So again, it's a written piece, a written document of all the things that they are going to be required to do. So it's a very good idea. Let me talk just for a minute about this give and get or give or get, because I think it's important. I would encourage all of you not to think about give or get, but give and get. And I think there's an important difference between those two. So the problem with give or get is that people who give are also the people who can give most are also the people who can get most. So it's problematic if you say, well, you don't have to give, but I want you to get. It's very hard for someone to get money if they're not giving money, even at a fairly low level. So I would encourage you to use the language give and get if you're going to do that, not give or get, right? And a lot of organizations wrestle with that, right? The give or get simply isn't as powerful. Even if somebody can give $50 and go to 3 people to get $50, that's great, right? But it's both and, not one or the other. All right. Be sure you tell them beforehand what it is you're going to expect to the extent that you can write it out so you have it to go to afterwards and to hold them accountable. It will be tremendously helpful for you. If somebody says to you, I'm willing to serve on your board, but really I can't do very much, I'm not in town much, even if they're a big name, right? I would ask them to fill another role. I would put them on an advisory committee. I would ask them to serve in an ad hoc committee of some way. I would not ask them to serve on your board. It's simply not worth it, right? Yes.
Would you ask, would you share their answers with the rest of the board?
Share the answers.
What they can give or what
The give.
what they're bringing to the table.
What they're bringing to the table. You know, how much people can give is often confidential. So you're not going to want to.
Money, I just meant time.
You know, your nominating committee or board governance committee is going to, whoever's doing the nominating is going to look at that, right? And that's appropriate for them to look at, right? But you're not going to want to share it broadly, I don't think. Though you certainly will want on your fundraising report a line of collective board giving, so everybody knows knows how much the board as a whole has given. And I would also encourage you to put a line about the percentage of board members who have contributed, so people can see if there are some board members who haven't, right? But you can't call them out by name, right, publicly, right? Okay. Inspire your board. Let's say you have this collection of people on board that everybody really does do what they say they're going to do. Everybody is passionate, and everybody has 3 of the 5 characteristics that I mapped out for you. So they come to monthly board meetings. Most of you have monthly board meetings? Yes. Monthly board meetings. So they sit down, you have reports, right? They go through one report after another. Maybe you have a speaker at a board meeting. I don't know, what else do they do at your board meetings? And then everybody goes home. Tell me, who has an aspired board meeting that really works? Who has a board meeting where everybody is totally excited, and how do you make it that way?
We're currently working on our strategic plan. So the first half is the consent items, a quick update, and then broken into groups according to the committees they're on. So each board member has to be on a committee.
Yeah.
And then they do a small, takes about 25 minutes where they work on the strategic plan, making sure they're running to meet in our marks.
Right. So what you said is that the board comes together, they have a consent agenda, they break them up into smaller groups, and they work on various aspects of the strategic plan that they're working on. Right? So it's actually active, lively, everybody's doing stuff, right, at the board meetings. Then they come back together, report on what they've done? Yes. Yes, here.
We have a similar strategy, but one of the things that really helps, because we broke up in groups, and I find that sometimes even that can be mundane for them.
Yeah.
But I brought in a strategic speaker.
A strategic speaker, yes, at every board meeting?
Well, key board meetings where I want them to be inspired to do something significant.
Yes, a strategic speaker. So here's the point. The point is this. It is very easy to have monthly board meetings become very boring, right? Become totally mundane and routine, in part because nobody's paying close attention to the experience of the board. You're trying to get through the work. Everybody's busy. Right? Nobody is developing a plan to make every board meeting exciting, vibrant, effective, fun, right? To building a sense of enthusiasm. I'd like you to make a little list, or actually let's do it this way. Turn to the person next to you. I think we can work that here. Turn to the person next to you and come up with 5 things you might do at a board meeting to wake everybody up, to get everybody excited. 5 things you might do. Let's do a little bit of popcorn here. I want one idea, how to make your board meetings exciting, with things you can do at your board meeting. We're just going to run around the room. Yes?
Incorporate what the youth is doing.
I'm sorry?
Use stories.
Incorporate what the youth is doing. Use stories at every board meeting. Yes, here.
You bring your youth to talk. You bring one of the kids to talk.
Bring one of the kids to talk. Yes.
Invite the board to actually come to the center.
Invite the board to come to the center and see. Of course, you guys are dealing with the best stories and the most exciting things in the whole world. Yes. Somebody else.
Eliminate paper.
Eliminate paper. I like that. Yes. Please.
Short video clip.
Short video clip. Absolutely. Yes.
Speed dating with staff so that they can even learn about
Speed dating with staff. Oh, God, I think it's so important for your board to get to meet your staff who's actually out in the field. Speed dating with staff is a really, really interesting idea. Yes?
We actually did this, and it really inspired the board. We had every board member come an hour early, and they were assigned to different, and we did a rotation, and they went through the reading program, and they did STEM, and they went to the teen center. when they went to the front desk, they stood out at the traffic circle. They experienced what our staff experiences day in and day out, and it was
powerful.
The board meeting was crazy.
Yes, the board members came an hour early, and they went through every program for a bit. They did what the staff did, right? And it lit everybody up because they understood. Fantastic. Yes. Yes.
Really inspiring them to knowing what they've done for the week, for the month. If a certain board member has done something spectacular,
yes,
really praise them and allow them to be acknowledged.
Yes, yes.
Empowers the other ones to.
Absolutely. Acknowledge board members who have done things. Give them an opportunity to report on what they've done, right? Celebrate them when they've been successful. Boy, there's nothing like celebrating success to motivate other people. Yes, you do it with your kids all the time, but you don't do it enough with your board members, right? We don't think board members need that stuff. So yes?
If you can afford it, try to have food available for your
food available at board meetings. How about drink? No drink? Right. Creature comforts, right, so everybody's happy. Yes?
About every fourth meeting, we have 4 clubs, 4 units. We'll meet at a club while the kids are there.
Yes, meet at the club while the kids are there. Every fourth meeting, meet at the club while the kids are there. Is your attendance particularly high at those meetings?
Yeah, we have 16 on the board. The average attendance is probably 12 to 13.
Right. His attendance is high, particularly at the meetings. Excuse me, when they go and see see what's going on. Anybody else? Yes.
So we do little thank yous to our board. So in March, when it was St. Patty's Day, we gave them 3 coins and with the little things says, "We're lucky to have you."
Yes.
And
Yes.
we do sort of a theme, and for those who are not there, we actually mail it.
Yes. Thank you. Special coins, and then they mail the board recognition, right?
Yeah, it's a monthly thing, so it's a theme. So April we did.
Every month you do it. Interesting.
Every board meeting. So April we did packets of seeds.
Yes.
For helping our kids.
April, packets of seeds for helping the kids grow. St. Patty's Day, little green coins, right? Something every week, every month. It's interesting to think about whether you could get a board member to be thinking about that, or perhaps you already do.
Working on it.
Yes, you're working on it. Yes. Something else inspirational from this side of the room. How do you get your board members be excited and inspired at meetings? Yes?
We celebrate the successes. We talk about non-alcoholic beverages. So we do like a champagne toast if we have a successful fundraiser.
Right.
Celebrate
successes. I'm so happy to hear that, because I think we're so allergic to problems. Problems become so big, and successes tend to get overshadowed, right? We don't take the time to celebrate successes. If you start celebrating little successes, rather than having board meetings where you're really only wrestling with problems, right? If you start celebrating successes, you'll start to shift the culture of your board. Anybody else? We'll take 2 more. Let's have 2 more. Yes?
Outside of their board participation, they also have successes and accomplishments. And so we want to acknowledge those, so we can acknowledge them.
Yes.
Acknowledge it in social media or other places. So rather than one, I got caught up on this week, but birthday shout outs are always good.
Right.
So to be able to do that, because you're recognizing them as a person, that's also part of it.
Right, so they celebrate the successes of board members outside of board responsibilities, right? If they see somebody who's done something big or gotten an award or had a birthday or something else, they'll actually call that out, right? Here's the power of that, and I think it's such an essential point. The power of that is that it means that you're actually seeing your board members. And being seen, when we talk about how to recognize people, how to celebrate people, it turns out that you can do big and fancy things, and that's fine. You can have gala parties, and that's fine. But the most powerful sort of recognition is to know that somebody noticed. It's to know that somebody noticed when you did something. And that touches people more, really, than the biggest of public celebrations. We tend to forget it, but it's incredibly powerful. So, at every board meeting, you and perhaps your governance committee needs to be thinking about how you can inspire your board, how you can create a culture that gets people excited. And when you have a sense that the energy of your board meetings is low, that your board members kind of wander in and wander out and that attendance falls off. There is stuff you should be doing about it. So here are the ways you can figure out if your board is in fact inspired. These are the things to look for. Do they show up at meetings? Do they participate actively? Does everyone participate actively? Or do you have 2 or 3 people who talk all the time and everybody else sits quietly? That happens, you got a problem, right? Do they volunteer when something needs to be done, or do they hide? Pay attention to that. Do they champion your cause far and away outside of the boardroom? Do they visit your programs on their own? Do they offer to help you? Can you feel a buzz at board meetings? If you answer no to some of these questions, you can sit down and have a conversation just using the ideas that this room has generated and figure out what you might do to start changing the culture of your board. Because it doesn't take much. That's what's interesting. Doesn't take much. All right. If you can't figure out how to get a buzz going with your board, I would encourage you to sit down with them at a board meeting, to take half an hour, 20 minutes at a board meeting, and have your board chair or someone else say, we have noticed that the energy on this board is not what we would like it to be. Let's have a conversation about what to do, about what's wrong and what we might do. You know, no one wants to serve on a board that's not functional, right? It's not fun, frankly. No one wants to do that. But what happens is that we don't raise it as a subject. We don't raise it in a board meeting. We don't say attendance is down, right? People aren't volunteering. We see the signs that things aren't right. Can we talk about what's wrong and what to do? Just by asking that question, the energy on your board is going to start to turn up. Just by asking that question. So interesting how simple the answers sometimes are. All right. Train them. Yes?
Beyond that, can I just say,
please.
My board changed when they started coming to Boys and Girls Club of America, whether it's local area council, regional leadership, or this. When I started saying, you guys got to come to these with me, my board changed.
Your board changed. That's so interesting. So how many, she says that her board changed dramatically when she started asking people to come to this conference with her board members to come to this conference with her. How many of your board members could you bring?
At one in Atlanta, I had 5.
She had 5 board members at Atlanta. And it begins to change the energy, right? It makes them more important. So interesting to me how sensitive these things are. You start getting a couple people excited, that's as contagious as anything else. You are after spreading a contagion of energy and excitement and enthusiasm in your board. Yes?
Does the club pay for those board members to get there?
Just
Or do you budget
registration.
them? Just registration, and they pay their way?
Yep.
Okay.
Everybody hear that? Right, they pay registration, but the board members pay their way. Any other questions about that?
How many board members are here?
How many board members are in this room? Oh, a good sense. Woo! Fantastic. Gee, I thought there was a whole board track here. No? Yes.
Can you ask, can we get size? I've got a small board. I'm new on the board.
Yeah.
I've got a small board. How big do boards go?
How big do boards go? Well, let's test it out in this room. How many of you have have a board of 10 or fewer? Half a dozen. How many of you have had 10 up to 20?
Wow.
More. More than 20? More than 50? Couple really big boards here, right? There's a lot to say about board size, right?
We talk about most major corporations, their boards, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, their boards are 10, 12, 14 people.
Right, so, yeah. So, all right, it's interesting. what a variety of board size. My own preference is that smaller boards, not more than 15 or so, are easier to manage. There are some organizations who can manage to deal with larger boards than that, but the bigger it is, the more deadwood you're likely to have and the more complicated it is to keep a really active culture going. There are reasons sometimes when you have mergers, for example, boards get large. There are reasons that boards get large, but it tends to be difficult. Yes?
I think having a big board, if onboarding is done correctly, is great, because why would you not want 50 to 100 people pulling for your kids? But you have to have the onboarding process and the accountability process to ensure that that's there. So we're trying to double it.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. He says that he thinks that a bigger board is better. I mean, why would you not want 100 people pulling for your kids? Right? If you could get 100 people who are truly excited and doing what they say they're going to do and really active, why not? You have a point. But I think it's challenging. It would take some real serious work and leadership to make that happen. So I wouldn't encourage all of you to try to get a great big board. Yes?
I think you can have your board of 15 or 20. What you need are competent board members who are ahead of committee, who go out into the community and choose the people they need, who are specific in that milieu, to do whatever needs to be done. They don't have to be that board meeting, just be the whole babysitting routine, if you will.
Right.
You need a very special who can go out and find what you need for the time that you need them.
Yeah, the point that you've made, and I think it's a very good one, is that you can have a smaller board but still recruit a very big army of people who are doing great things. If each of your board members is willing to go out and get people on board in various areas. So I think that's right. Obviously, the more people you have pushing for your programs and your kids, the better. How big a board you can manage and keep really effective, my experience is that once it gets over 12 or 15, it gets hard. And there are some people who can really do it. So my hat's off to you if that's what you can do. I'm all for it if you can really create something with the energy and passion that it takes to do that. All right. Train your board. I am big into training your board. In fact, I think you should do it all the time. How many of you have a line item in your budget for board training?
I don't know.
A few. Well, I'm pleased that a few of you do. Most of the time ask that question and just about no one raises their hands. So it always amazes me that people tell me their boards are lousy at fundraising, and when I ask them if they have a line item in their budget for training them to be good at fundraising, they say no. What's wrong with that picture? Yes?
Well, if you're paying for board members to come, registration to come to conferences, that needs to be a budget item.
That needs to be a budget item. If you're bringing in a speaker for a retreat, for example, you could have a board retreat that focuses just on fundraising, a 3-hour board retreat, a day board retreat. You could take your board members to the fundraising school in Indianapolis. There are lots of things you could do that are big training opportunities. And I think they are powerful. Just in the same way when you bring people to this conference, it makes them bond, right? If you do other things where they're actually working together around fundraising, they begin to build a team and they have less tolerance for the people who don't get on board. So all of that is powerful and works. There are many other ways to train your board. And one of the things that I like best is the idea of doing some board training at every board meeting. Setting aside 15 or 20 minutes or 30 minutes at every board meeting. Setting the expectation that you're going to do some kind of a training or exercise. And then picking an exercise, planning it as a part of your board meeting. So we're going to try a little exercise. It's one of my favorites to try for your board. You can do it when you get home. It's kind of fun. In a minute, I'm going to ask you to stand up, but before you do, I want you to find a partner, and I want you to assign A and B. So one of you is an A, and one of you is a B. So find a partner, and assign an A and a B. If you can hear me, clap. Do you have your partner? You know who's an A and a B? All right. Now, I want you to stand up and be quiet while I give you instructions. Stand up. Face your partner. All right. A, person A. I want you to put with your right hand, make a fist with your thumb on the outside. And I want you to extend it to your partner, to person B. Person B, when I say go, you have 10 seconds to open that person's hand. Are you ready, set, go? All right. If you can hear me, clap your hands. Sit down. Now, I saw many people in the room prying open hands. Did anybody in the room come up with a better idea? Tickling, yes. How about an idea over here? Tickling, yes. Back there. What did you do? You asked them. Is that what somebody said? I can't see where it's coming from. You asked them. Yes. What? Would you please open your hand?
She didn't. If she had, I'd open my hand.
Yes.
You give me $100,000 for my club if I open my hand.
Would you give me $100,000 for my club if I open my hand? Yes. Yes.
I used the club.
You used the club, right? Yes, back here. What? You bit his hand. Did any?
I threw something at his hand. I threw it so he catch it.
Somebody here threw something at the hand, so they had to catch it, right? Did anybody just extend their hands? Yes, as in shaking my hand. Now, here's the question. If we were sitting in your board meeting and you had just done this with your board, you would then say, what is there to learn from this exercise? What can we learn and what can we apply to fundraising? If you ask, people are likely to give, right? Asking is not about prying or forcing. Right? Asking is about inviting people to be open and generous. Right? Now, I venture to guess that a month from now, when you think about this workshop, that's what you're going to remember. All the rest will probably go away. But you're going to remember this. You may think about it tonight or next week and say, that's really right. Right? I don't have to work so hard. I don't have to force things. I can invite people to be generous. And if I do, they're likely to do that. So I share this with you because it's a simple, powerful exercise. You can do it with your board in the 10 minutes that it's taken me to do it here. Everyone will laugh, everyone will think it was funny, and everyone will, if you stay with it long enough, will start to come up with ideas about how this simple lesson can play out in your fundraising. And that, of course, is the trick of any training, right? Not the exercise itself, but the application of the exercise. How do we take that? How do we take that idea that if we invite people to be generous, they'll be generous? And how do we make that work with our fundraising? What are we doing that tries to force people? What are we doing that tries to open our hand to them? So in that little list of exercises, you can have a remarkable effect on your board. Can you imagine starting one of your board meetings with that exercise? Easy, right? Easy. But when you think about, well, we're going to do a training at every board meeting, it feels yicky. Right? It feels like, I don't want to do that. But these little things can be just terribly easy. I'll give you another one. Let me see what I've put here. Yes, I do have a book here. The book is here for sale, right? So there's a book. It's a book of 51 training exercises that I wrote with my friend Andy Robinson, who's a master trainer. And it's a little cookbook it actually doesn't have this fist exercise in it, but it has a whole bunch of other great exercises. Susan told me that she makes her a little nervous when people get that book because she uses it for her training. So, but it has, we got exercises from a lot of people in the field, including Kay Sprinkle Grace, I think, who submitted one, I think. And so it's a really good little resource. This is what I call a quick and active exercise. You can do a mingle exercise, and we won't do it now, but I'll tell you how it goes. And it really is a good exercise. It comes from my partner in crime, Gail Perry, whom some of you may know Gail's work. So she has everybody write down 3 reasons that they are passionate about the organization, 3 reasons they're willing to serve on the board on an index card. So that gets everybody to think about it first, and then she gets them to stand up, and she gives them 30 seconds to go and talk to somebody, talk to one person, and exchange reasons back and forth. Then she rings a bell, and they find somebody else, and they exchange back and forth. She does that 4 times, and then she has everyone come back to the table and sit down and share what they learned in sharing their reasons and hearing other people's reasons. Now that exercise, again, it takes 10 minutes, right? It's very easy and very simple. It accomplishes 2 things. It gets everybody in touch with why they're involved, and we tend to forget, right? Because you have to write it down. You have to say, well, really, I'm passionate about this organization because kids are so important to me, or because I know someone who has served, or whatever your reasons are. I grew up in a family that believed in this. Right? Second, it gets your board members to know one another better, and that's a really good idea. And actually, it accomplishes a third thing, which is that it helps each board member understand the wide range of reasons that their organization is important, because they'll hear from other board members reasons that were not on their list. It's a very interesting, very effective, simple exercise. I've used that in capital campaign trainings. Gail uses it in board workshops. It's quick, it's simple, no special tools. And what makes an exercise work is that you're asking people to do something that they can do, right? You're calling on their experience. You're not giving them a test. You're not getting them to talk about something they don't understand. So it's an effective exercise. I like thought exercises. A thought exercise might go something like this. I'd like you to think for a minute, and I would like you to do this, about an organization you support. It doesn't have to be the Boys and Girls Club, any organization you support. And I'd like you to think about your annual gift to that organization this year, and the lowest amount you might make, or the highest amount you might make. So get 2 numbers in your mind, right? If the highest amount you can imagine giving, and the lowest amount you would give. All right, you have 2 numbers? Now, on a piece of paper, and I won't have you write it down now, but I would, at a board meeting, I would do this. I want you to write down, what is it that would make you give at the higher level? What would be the trigger for a higher level gift? Don't worry about the number, just what would be the trigger for you to give a higher level gift? Now, the kinds of things people are going to write down are, I was asked, right? I was asked by somebody I knew. The organization did something that I thought was spectacular. The executive director was, amazing. This new program. I mean, it's going to hear a whole bunch of different reasons. And when you then make a collective list of all the reasons people would give at the higher level on a flip chart, because you'll ask them to give their reasons, you're going to get a whole list of things that you should think about doing to raise more money for your organization. And the question will then be, how do we take this list and how do we apply it to our ongoing fundraising? That exercise takes about 15 minutes, no more, and comes up with powerful, it both gets the people thinking about, well, what would it take to get me to give more? And then it helps everybody say, okay, here are the things we need to be doing so the people give more, right? Powerful, simple, easy exercise. You can do it as a development director with your board, or as an executive director, or as a board member. You can do that, and it'll get great conversation going. All right, even role-playing exercises. People tell me their board members hate role-playing exercises. It's not true. Board members are happy to practice. They're happy to practice. We just have this lore that they don't want to do this stuff. Don't shy away from role-playing. Try it out. Play with it. Have fun with it, right? Build it. We won't do it now, but you should build it. All right. I would encourage you at every board meeting to do an exercise. And here are some sample things you can do. What's our mission? Why people give? The cycle of fundraising. The ABCs of identifying prospects. 6 quick asks. These are all simple, easy topics and topics to develop exercises about. If you set the expectation for your board that you will do a simple, fun game at every board meeting, they're going to look forward to it. They're going to be interested in it. They're going to want to do it. And they'll probably take it to other boards they serve on. So it'll up the energy. And of course, it'll make them be more confident and comfortable about fundraising. Questions? I'm watching the time here. So, someone I talked to in New York some time ago, a very wealthy guy, told me that he thought that boards should invite a guest speaker to every board meeting who would come and talk for 10 or 15 minutes to the board. And it should be someone of note in their community, someone who can impart some information to that board about something that is relevant either to their community or what they do. I thought that was interesting. What happens is that over time, if you do a lot of that, you will get dignitaries in your community knowing about your organization, and you will give your board members a chance to rub shoulders with dignitaries in the community and to learn something. So it's an interesting idea that you might want to try in your board meetings. Okay, hold board members accountable. Let me tell you about my friends at Harlem RBI. Anybody here in New York, from New York? You know Harlem RBI? Yes, so Harlem RBI is an organization in East Harlem. In New York, they've done a fantastic job of fundraising. They work with kids after school and then now have a charter school around using baseball and softball as the lure, hence the RBI mantra. Every year, their board chair sits down and meets with every board member to go over what they accomplished the year before and to talk about what they're willing to sign on for the following year. And if a board member hasn't done what they said they were going to do, they have a serious conversation about whether it was just a one-year lapse or whether they should resign. Now, here's what's interesting about that. I have never, in my many years in the fundraising business, seen a board that was as high-functioning as the Harlem RBI board, or a board that people were clamoring to get on, right? There is a list, they have a list of people who ask to be considered to serve on that board. Now that's interesting, right? Because you know if you serve on that board, you've got to function. You know it's a high-functioning board. So by holding people accountable, they actually do a huge amount to raise the stakes for that group. And in fact, if you know somebody who serves on the Harlem RBI board, you should be impressed because they were carefully chosen, carefully selected. I think they have about 18 people on their board. And occasionally they rotate, people rotate off, right? They don't have mandatory stepping down, but they have no hesitation in saying, you know, you really didn't do this the last couple of years. Maybe this isn't the right time for you. That they gently usher people off, right? And people understand and do that. So on the slide I'm going to send you at the end, you can actually get a copy of the Harlem RBI, a sample of their board report card. They call it a report card. And it would be interesting for a committee from your organization to take that on, to say, you know, somebody earlier said that he had people, you know, you kind of signed on specifically for things. That would set that up, right? You sign on to do ABC, and at the end of the year, you look and see, you signed on to do ABC, how much of that did you do or did you not do? Okay, hold your board members accountable. That's going to help weed out a lot of the 11 or 12 people on your board who are not functioning well, right? You start to put in place a process, and everyone on your board is going to know that that's going to happen. And you need to make it that way, right? It needs to be a subject of a board conversation. Okay. Reward your board members. Now, we've talked about that a little already, and I think it is so powerfully important to do that. I'm aware, as you are, of how easy it is to get trapped in things that are not good and not right, and how hard it is to turn your attention to what is right. I would reward your board members in ways that are big and little. But the biggest way to reward them is really to pay attention to who they are and what they've done, and let them know that. Nothing beats that, really. Nothing beats that. And again, you know, we have big things, but we don't do these little issues of attention. So to the extent that you can do that, that you can look at every board member as though they are the champions for you, and you pay close attention to them, they will start to function better. You only function badly when you think no one's noticing, right? What would it take to get your board to be a fundraising machine, an excited, energized fundraising machine? The right people, inspired group, a trained group that knows what they're doing and is willing to keep learning, a group that understands that they are going to be held accountable for their actions, and a group that feels as though you and the board chair and others in the organization are actually paying attention to what they're doing, are actually seeing their contributions, noticing and seeing their contributions. Now, I said in the beginning that there was something missing in this list. What I think is missing is that I lost the piece that said they need a fantastic staff who is willing to organize them around great fundraising, right? That's what's missing. Amen. So I'm sorry I missed that in my list. It is important. They need a coach. They need someone who's going to do all the back systems. They need someone who's going to point them in the right direction. Without you, they can't function, right? They won't function well. So that's what's missing in the list. But if you only do that and you don't do the rest of the stuff, you're going to be pushing string. You know that expression? It's a good expression, pushing string, right? Because people don't want to do things if they're not excited and fired up and feel like they're seen, and again, having fun and feeling like they're privileged to be on your team and to be on the team of this organization. And let's go back just for a minute to imagining what that would look like when your board member calls you up and says, I met this fantastic donor and I scheduled a meeting and I want you to come along with me, right? Or I finished all my 5 calls and I'm ready for more. Or, right, that's where you're trying to get. And I think it's not so hard as you might imagine to do that. So I'm going to stop my talking at you. I'm happy to stay for questions. And we can have a lively conversation for those of you who would like to hang with me on that. I am doing a session, in the next session in this room, and it is all on capital campaigns, which is really my expertise, frankly. So those of you who would like to stay for that, I'd be happy to have you as well. But let's take the next 5-10 minutes for questions. Please, anybody? Yes?
Can you tell us again, what was the name of your book that had the exercises in it?
Train Your Board, and I have one more thing to tell you before you leave. Actually, here it is. Oops. Train your board and everyone else to ask for money. You can get resources at trainyourboard.com BCGA /BCGA. Go to that website. I've got a special page for you with stuff. Thank you.